Hello folks, we are back to the bolt gun gameplay. Hope you're having a wonderful day. I hope you are having a really good week as well and that things are going well for you. It is Thursday. It is time for another Ranty 40k rant. If you like what I do, the subscribe button is down below. The Patreon button is also down below. That is there if you want to be involved in the prize draw that will be happening on the 6th of August. All you need to do is sign up down there to any amount that you wish, and you'll be involved in the prize draw. The top prize is £50 worth of free models from Composite Games, and there is also a Dark Angels box set ready to go. Dark Angels Command box set, the Deathwing box set ready to go as well. So, I have decided to actually add something to that prize draw, and that will be the Redemptor tank. I'm going to see if I can make sure that it's ready and packaged, ready to go before the prize draw, and if it is, then I'll do it this month. If not, it'll be next month, but you will know as soon as it's ready to go. You will indeed, probably on Monday. By Monday, I will know if I can do that or not. So, thank you very much for supporting me. Go and support Composite Games as well. Go and make sure that you give them some love. Use the promo code Northern Exile down below to get yourself 5% off at checkout for any of your model needs going forwards. Back into the rant. This is the second controversial video this week, and oh boy, does it seem like this is going to be a bit of a doozy. I would like to make a few things clear before we start, though. That's just getting down some ground rules and my opinions on this matter before we go any further, okay? Number one, I believe all aspects of Warhammer 40,000 that allow people to enjoy the hobby without being a nuisance to others are valid, precious, and worthy of backup and support. This includes tournaments and being competitive at them. That's what tournaments are about. I have no problem with being competitive per se. I have a massive problem with players being arrogant and anti-fun. You're playing the game wrong if you do those things. That's simply how it is. Number two, tournament teams should be at tournaments. This video is not directed at banning them from the hobby. It is about examining the ways in which such attitudes can filter down and change the hobby as a whole. Alright, so now we've got those two big disclaimers out the way. Because I know a lot of people will be like, you're telling me I can't play the hobby? Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not. I'm examining where the hobby could go if this kind of thing takes over. In two main points, really. The first one I like to call leading by example. If you're into video games, you know what I mean when I say that competitive gaming, the scene in itself, has changed gaming somewhat, right? The competitive side of video games has changed gaming as a whole. Games are no longer geared towards split screen like back in the day. Multiplayer games, for the vast majority, focus on meta builds, playing for blood. Cooperative games are so rare these days that when they do come out, they form the basis of a lot of the marketing behind that game. Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2 being one of the main examples, and games like that are a good indicator of how much of a big deal people treat co-op games when they eventually come out. It's so rare. Why is this though? Because back in the day, nearly every game that ever came out was cooperative. Well, that's because the internet divulged, so you didn't need to be in the same room to play games anymore, but also because competitive professional gaming changed the medium. From the mid to late noughties, professional competitive gaming exploded to the point that in 2012, when I first started university, nearly all of my friends bought shirts for their favourite CSGO team or their favourite Dota team or anything like that. They would have these shirts and they would follow specific teams. The same thing happened when I was in London. I had a few friends down there who were really into Overwatch, and they just had all of the merchandise of certain Overwatch teams. I think it was London Spitfire or something like that was going on. When you think about it, this is natural and actually quite healthy. It also gives gamers who are good at what they do an outlet to make money from their talent, which is also good. Twitch and YouTube have done a lot to foster the audience of competitive players, and this is spread to the rest of the medium of video games. People rapidly lose interest in games that do not require you to take on other players. Even in games like Vermintide, if we're going to bring it back to the hobby, a cooperative game, there is a scorecard at the end showing you which players on your team are the best in that scenario, fostering a natural competitive spirit in a game that is not really about that competitive spirit. Indeed, one of the main complaints about Darktide when it was released, apart from being a broken, buggy mess with a cash shop that actually worked, was the omission of such a tallying up card at the end of a mission. Okay? Now that just didn't happen. We didn't get that tallying up card at the end of a Darktide mission. As far as I know, as far as I'm aware, we still don't, and it's still a bugbear for most people, because they want to see how well they did in comparison to their friends. That never used to be a thing, though. So, why are we addicted to competition in that medium? In a word, stakes. Things feel a lot more real when you are taking someone on in a competitive way. Your skills are being tested against theirs, and that rush is very, very addictive. What does that mean for 40k though? Well, here is the thing. 40k is not an overly competitive game or medium. It was never designed to be that. Okay? That's a very important thing that we need to understand. 40k was never meant to be competitive. Rogue Trader was not a competitive game, and every game since then has focused more on the narrative than it has tournaments and playing for blood and playing competitively. It's always been about, like, I mean the 3rd edition rulebook, what a lot of people say is the best one, right, in terms of a rulebook, just having a rulebook. 90% of that rulebook was dedicated to running campaigns and running narratives and how to get the most out of your army on the tabletop in a fluffy sense, right? The rules were in there, sure, but most of the book was dedicated to getting the most out of your army in terms of the story going on in your head. That's why so many people vote it as the highest form of the medium of 40k. In nostalgia, I think it's great. I don't think it's the best edition, though. I think that was 8th, and that's because... I'll get into that another time. Anyway. So from Rogue Trader, right through to 10th edition, the main focus of the 40k rulebook has been 2 things. And that's right from the get-go, right from page 1. Number 1, having fun. Just playing with your friends, having a good time, the spirit of the game, right? Number 2, telling great stories on the tabletop with your models. Those are the 2 main things that every single rulebook of Warhammer 40,000 has focused on. Each rulebook has shown this exact message at the start of the new edition. It's about having fun and telling great stories. In the current Leviathan book, though, which is a rulebook, that changes somewhat. Instead, the narrative part of the hobby is described last in a blurb covering the hobby. Competitive games, tournaments, and building and painting are given precedence, instead of being, smudged in there somewhere. The first real thing we have seen showing the hobby is not the lore or anything like that in that rulebook. It is a quick 2-page battle report. Games Workshop is taking the temperature of the room and acting accordingly. The largest YouTube channels for 40k are ones dealing with painting and models. Secondly, close second, we have competitive battles and reports, and a distant third, unfortunately, is lore and storytelling. Because the younger people getting into the hobby, the people who drive the numbers on YouTube and drive sales quite a lot of the time, are people who grew up with gaming in a competitive space. These are the people now entering into the hobby. Us being dinosaurs who love lore and love building armies that are lore friendly, we're a dying breed. It's just what we are, unfortunately. The numbers tell all in that sense. There is also a part in the new rulebook, of the Leviathan rulebook, called the Spirit of the Game. In old rulebooks, the spirit of the game was covered in several pages. There'll be several pages showing you what to do on the tabletop and how not to act at the tabletop. How to treat the rules as guidelines, how to make sure that you're having a good time. In Leviathan, it is a small blurb in a grey box on something like page 8. Somewhere around there. It's a very small blurb. That's the spirit of the game. There, that's it. the hobby is changing and heading into this competitive direction, whether old-timers like it or not. And I mean old-timers like me, whether we like it or not. The thing is, I can see the Warhammer 40,000 hobby being rather like gaming in its change. Gradually, with the influence of proper teams and tournaments being accessed and watched online, we will see this competitive side slowly take over to the point that people will actively follow and support certain 40k teams. These teams will have merch, and of course, their attitudes will carry over to the normal side of the gaming and the hobby. That's where we're going, I think, in the hobby. So that's leading by example. That's why we have one issue, because if you have the wrong attitude on the tabletop as an example to other players, that wrong attitude will filter down into the rest of the community. Anybody who's into video games will tell you how much of a fucking toxic space it can be, thanks to attitudes that bleed down from competitive gaming and places like that, and meme culture, which is why I try and have a go at meme culture when it tries to make its way into 40k. I don't like it. I think it's going to tarnish and poison the lovely hobby that we've built over a couple of decades now. So this is part 2. What's the real issue with melding these two genres together, with melding these two phenomenons together and forming a really, really challenging competitive scene that has actual teams in it, professional wise, you know? That's where we're going, and that's what certain people are pushing for. So the real issue. This is why I commend the spirit. I commend it. The spirits of efforts by teams like Vanguard Tactics, who want to play the game in the proper gentlemanly way, even if they don't always follow their own advice on that front. The issue is, I see, that from what I see, is that not a lot of pro teams, quote-unquote pro teams, are following suit, instead using their team colours and influencer status to arrogantly lord over other gamers and intimidate people in casual settings and games. I am sent 1 or 2 hobby nightmares calling out specific team players a week. I'd rather if you were sending me those things, by the way, if you kept less descriptors in those stories, because keep them to a minimum, because unlike Vanguard Tactics and Dicebreaker games, I actually don't want to dox anyone that I disagree with, right? There was one video that I talked about a while ago that Dicebreaker put up on their channel that had Vanguard Tactics on there discussing the competitive side of 40k and how it's changing 40k for the better. And in that video, the leader of Vanguard Tactics, I forget his name, had a disagreement with the guy that he was playing, and the guy that he was playing wasn't doing a very good job of remembering his rules and was actually getting a few things wrong. Mostly to his benefit, by the way. So he was kind of a hobby nightmare. But instead of just saying that, they showed the guy's face, essentially doxing him to the rest of the hobby and making out that like this Vanguard Tactics guy was some sort of fucking hero for picking up his models, throwing a strop, and not wanting to play the game anymore. That's not how you play the game, dude. You call out what he's doing, and you remain there till the end of the game, and you refuse to play him anymore after that. You don't just pick up your models and wander away like a little bitch, right? That's not what you do. You're showing a bad example. And by the way, if you're just a normal guy playing a game like that, and if you're the guy's actively cheating and you don't want to play anymore, I take that back. Feel free to pick up your models and move away. If you're being filmed for a video that might have hundreds of thousands of views, you remain where you are, you do your bit for the hobby, and you show people that you've got to man up and play games. And make sure that you're a gentleman, that you practice what you preach. Don't throw away your game and walk away in a strop because the other player is doing things that you don't like at the tabletop. That was my takeaway from that video. And by the way, don't dox people, don't show people's face, don't don't show their names. There is a very good reason why I'm so reticent about doing hobby nightmares about specific players in specific teams. Because it's very, very, very easy to find out who those people are and dox them. And that's not what I want to do, which is why I've only read out one of these stories on the channel. If you have stories about team players in a tournament or in a casual setting and you want to send them to me, please don't name the team, please try not to describe the team colours, and definitely don't say their name. Alright? Use their call sign, because most of these idiots have call signs. Do that instead. rather than doxing the poor person. Because I'm not going to read it out. All right, I'm not in that sphere. All right. The one story I have been able to read was just on Monday this week and pushed me into finally taking the plunge to do this particular video. Watch it if you haven't, but the arrogance, disregard, and preferential treatment on show for this supposedly pro player ruined the tournament for their opponent and quite likely for a few others that they played at the event also. The issue with competitive play seeping into the hobby is not the competitive spirit. That has always been a minor part of 40k as a whole. The issue is with the Dark Souls generation. Yeah, you heard me. You heard me. The people who are... Look, it's no secret that I don't like elitism. I don't like it. I think a lot of people are masking a lot of issues by being elitist when they're playing games that are essentially meant for nerds like us. The people who are picking up the banner of competitive play seem, in my own experience, to be people who sneer, get good scrub, at people when playing a casual game of toy soldiers after ending the game at the top of turn 2 and making sure the opponent didn't enjoy a whiff of it throughout the game, right? There is nothing wrong with encouraging others with tough love. That was something that came about with the original flow of the original Dark Souls. The original Dark Souls, people would say get good, but it was a loving gesture. It was saying, don't give up. Carry on, and you'll make it. Carry on. Talk to us about your experience and talk to us. Let us know where you're struggling. We'll give you tips. We'll get you there, but you will beat that boss. Carry on. That was a pure, loving spirit of the original Dark Souls message, and that was corrupted over time into, get good, scrub, and no more advice was given, right? That's toxic as fuck. Go fuck yourself. You're an idiot. You're an arrogant asshole. And to be honest with you, that you're treating a video game as if that's some sort of big achievement in life for you to actually beat this boss. It's not, right? We play these games to relieve stress. That's what we do. There is nothing wrong with encouraging others with tough love. We're driving them onwards with the message of, look, if you can't beat me, get better. There's nothing wrong with that in a competitive sense. Nothing wrong with that at all in an actual competitive sport. But in a video game, in a tabletop war game built around fun, no. I tend to think those people are missing a big part of their normally male self-esteem, that they need to rend their garments and prove to themselves that they are good, or at least something in their life. It's rather sad, and it's an attitude that is seeping into 40k as a whole. If you are someone who defines your self-worth on whether you're winning a game of toy soldiers or not, you need therapy. And I suggest you go and find it. But that is an attitude that is sadly seeping into a lot of 40k. So, a few personal stories now. I attend the local club here in the Northwest. Normally without an army, as I don't have that much time to play these days, but I wander around the stores and talk to people, and the club is good enough to accept my requests, not be named or shown, or even when people recognise the voice, which is nice. I say hello to them, but I also say, can you please not say anything, because it means I can walk around and just listen to people and talk to them without them getting their backs up or thinking that I'm interviewing them or something, when I just want to shoot the shit about the hobby. It happens quite a lot. Like when I first started getting noticed, it was quite annoying because I would talk to people normally and they would be standoffish, or they'd want something, or and it just wasn't an honest interaction. So I'd rather not be recognised now and just go incognito if I can. But I'm noticing 5 or 6 gaming shirts, quote unquote, with professional, quote unquote, 40k teams on them within my local club. Though most are local, so they're their local teams, but a few are indeed national and showing support for a particular team. Mostly those teams are from the London area, or the Greater London area. The attitudes from these people are ultra competitive, no joking around, sweaty forehead and creased brow gaming. Now don't get me wrong, none of these guys, at least that I've seen, are openly hostile, even if a few kind of act like Roger Federer when he's played a game-winning point, you know, in a dice game. The issue is that these guys are running out of games and people to play. Nobody wants to play them. Instead, they end up playing each other after others get wise to their antics. So after others see them getting stomping on a casual player, they'll go, haha, not playing that guy anytime soon. And in doing so, they become more insular, more laser focused on winning at all costs, and eventually most of these guys will leave the hobby through sheer stress, if anything else. Because normal people like me and you will not want to play these guys, and so they'll end up playing other alpha monsters like them. And in the end, most of those guys will leave the hobby. It's too stressful. It becomes not very fun. Those are the thoughts of Andrew, anyway, the leader of the club at Short Sword Gaming, who, when asked for a quote about it and if I could name him and his club, he said the following. And I quote, and now I've named him, I've named this club, so I've got to be very, very careful here. I quote, this is not me, this is him. We are definitely seeing a flow in the club towards competitive play, and that's just with tournaments and battle reports being on YouTube and shit like that. If things actually kick off and we get pro teams getting Cloud9-like followings, the sphere in here is definitely going to shift dramatically. I'm not sure if that's a good thing. It has its place. It has its place in the store, to be honest, mate. It does have its place. I love games played at the highest skill level and all that. At times, though, I just want to throw some dice and watch Gilliman and Angron smack 7 shades of shit out of each other. That almost never happens in tournaments, though. Epic moments like that are kind of rare, and I went to tournaments for about 15 years. Would be ashamed to see that cast aside for a win-win-win attitude, to be honest. Alright. End quote. So, that is the opinion of somebody running their own club. That is somebody who is seeing the Cloud9, by the way, are a gaming team who have quite a large following. So that's somebody who's seeing that kind of an attitude seep into his club, and he's not sure that it's worth having it there. It's great to see, as he said, it's great to see really cool pieces of, shall we say, skill and prowess when it comes to using your army. That's great. But the win at all costs attitude is making sure that the really cool narrative moments that we all love to see in the hobby are starting to not happen at his club. That's huge. That's huge. This video is not meant to generalize the tournament goer. Far from it. If you go to tournaments, as I said earlier in the piece, I am not going to sit here and tell people how to play the hobby. The tournament scene is, quite frankly, a thrilling and enthralling place where you can see the numbers crunched and seriously skillful players and plays by dedicated players who know what they are doing, right? Let's put it this way, though. I have an example from when I was younger. Football in the UK. There you go, segue. Football, soccer for you, those of you in the Americans who are bastards who can't seem to get anything right when you're giving them names. Aluminum, get in the fucking sea. What's going on there? Anyway, the reason why park football exists and five-a-side football exists in the UK, the reason why seniors football exists, all of these things, the reason why they still exist is that the Premier League is out of reach for all but a small few of us who make it there. Let me expand on that point. When I was 12 years of age, I was scouted by a neighbour who had spotted me playing football in my back garden. Something that he would likely get into trouble for these days. But he came to my mum's front door and knocked on it. He told her that he was a scout for Liverpool, a football club here in the UK, for those of you who aren't familiar with kicking a ball. And he wanted to take me to Melwood, which was the training ground at the time, to try out for the youth team there with a bunch of other lads in the local area. I went to the trial and I loved it. I did the same for Tranmere Rovers, another local club, and was offered the chance to be an apprentice there with the view to becoming a professional footballer. Tranmere, though, was a place to go when you'd already earned your money in football, not a place to actually make your money. The money in football back then, when I was 12, and in the lower leagues, was not very much. As such, my mum put the stoppers on it. She stopped it. She said, no, he's not going there. And for that, I was secretly thankful, because I was getting sick of the pressure, and it was sort of poisoning football for me. I didn't like it anymore. And it was getting a little bit much for me. And even then, at the age of 12, wearing the Liverpool kit, I kind of felt like I wanted to rip it off and burn it. The thing is, I never had any need or want to play five-a-side or any sort of casual football just for fun anymore after this. I'd had a taste of actual professional football, and messing around with my mates in the park was not enough for me anymore. So I walked away from it. The hobby only remains fun when you have no real chance of doing it at the top level. We emulate our heroes and we have fun. The issue with the hobby is that you can be that hero. You can win major tournaments with enough effort. You can join professional teams that are being made. As such, I have a feeling that once people get involved in the growing pro side of the hobby, we will see them lose all interest in just playing games for fun. The stakes are addictive. Throwing some dice with friends pales in comparison to playing and winning at a major tournament. That's simply how I believe it is, because I've experienced something similar. I always try and make sure that if I'm doing something, I'm doing it from the heart. I'm doing it from something that I've experienced. And I definitely experienced a falling out of love with something that I absolutely adored when I was a kid. And that was football. I loved playing it, I loved watching it, and to be honest with you, I pivoted from playing football to wrestling. I pivoted straight from football to wrestling, and I started watching wrestling religiously from the age of about 12, 13, because I just didn't like football anymore, you know? Well, not 13, I'd say about 14. From 14, you know, I'd had 2 years of banging my head against the wall with football, and I was just done. And it was addictive. It was completely addictive, and I couldn't play football normally anymore. It's not something that I enjoyed. I went to wrestling, and I went to video games. That's where I went after that. Wrestling, video games, and eventually 40k. But I really do fear for my younger self, if there was a professional 40k scene at the time, and I showed some talent at making army lists, at making good plays at tournaments, at remembering my rules. I really do fear. I don't think I'd be in the hobby now if that was the case. Because I would have got into the tournament scene, I would have done quite well, probably. And then when I try and play the game normally, it just pales in comparison. I treat it as a waste of time. So I just don't do it. Unless I'm practicing for a tournament. And if I'm practicing for a tournament, I'm playing for blood. I'm trying to make sure that my list is as good as it can be. And so I stop playing people for the fun of it, and I start playing people for blood. And eventually, the stress, the grind would get too much, and I'd walk away from the hobby. That's why I'm quite concerned. Eventually, and I truly believe this, eventually we will see tournaments have large monetary rewards for wins and placing highly in the tournament. We will have big sponsorships and a growing corporate side to the hobby. We may even see a world governing body of professional 40k wargaming associated with the Games Workshop in an official capacity. Games Workshop would be mad to not have that in the pipeline somewhere in the future. I am willing to bet that within 10 years, a company like Microsoft will be sponsoring a world grand tournament for Warhammer 40,000 that is streamed on Twitch, complete with prize money, merch sales, and copious amounts of models being sold at the show. That sounds really exciting to me, but I'm also keen to make sure that the very soul of the hobby is not lost in this constant chase for relevancy and mainstream success. What do you guys think? Am I being an old bugbear? Am I being someone who just needs to get with the times? Am I being someone who's overreacting to something that hasn't even happened yet? Or can you, like me, see where this is going and how these things are going to affect the hobby on a grand scale of things going forwards? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section down below. I've not meant to smear anybody with this. You know, even the comments with Vanguard Tactics, I'm not meant to like have a go at people. It's just something that I've noticed in videos and in the phenomenon of gaming right now. It's going in a place that I think might damage it. It might damage it for people like me who just like the narrative side of the games. Have you guys noticed in your own games things getting more competitive and more playing for blood? Or do you think I'm overreacting or going a bit too far? Or do you think I've just coloured it with my own experiences and that I've just had bad luck? Or maybe I'm overexposed to it because I do Hobby Nightmares. We'll see. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section down below. I love you all a long time. I will speak to you tomorrow for some more Hobby Nightmares to finish out the week. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I love you all. Speak to you later. Have a good one. Be safe. Bye now.